And a good evening to everybody. Welcome to the first ever edition of the GIAA High School Scoreboard Show, presented by the Beck Center. As many of you, if you don't know who I am Richard Holdridge from Georgia Alabama Sports Live, and I've had experience calling sporting events for the GIAA to include basketball alongside Thrift Behringer and soccer alongside Rhett Farmer. I'm excited to bring this episode on. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring Thrift Behringer on because we are going to go over the Columbus schools. That is the area that Thrift and I do cover for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. But we're going to start with some of the lower classification schools in the GIAA. We're going to start with Westwood. They end up getting a 46-6 win over Memorial Day. Also, we got Southwest Georgia Christian. They end up shutting out Deerfield Windsor 30-0. Also, how about the Flint River Wildcats? In fact, I'm going to bring Thrift Behringer on for this one. Thrift, you there?
I am here, Richard. Man,
there we go.
What an incredible night of GIAA football. And I saw you already did the first score, but Flint River, undefeated. They haven't lost a game in 2 years in the GIAA, defending 1A state champions, dominate Central Fellowship. They take on Calvary next week, but a big-time win for Flint River.
Yeah, and a big shout-out to Joe Howard, the voice of the Flint River Wildcats, 4-0 on the season. We're just going to do some quick hitters, Thrift, before we break down the Columbus schools. David Emmanuel, 44-0 over John Hancock. We've got Athens Academy. Remember, Shaw played Athens Academy. This is a GHSA school. They beat John Millage 47-14. Thrift, you were on the call last year for the championship for 3A. John Millage taking on Valwood. Valwood ended up breaking that long streak that John Millage had.
Yeah, John Millage is not the same program it's been the last 6 years. By the way, Athens Academy also beat Shaw pretty handily last week. So this is a top-notch program, but they just take John Millage to the woodshed and just dominate them by 33 points.
All right, we got Trinity Christian as they ended up defeating Augusta Prep 40-14. Briarwood Academy ends up defeating St. Andrews 46-12. And by the way,
Briarwood, and I saw them in basketball. They St. Andrews obviously had one of the top-notch basketball programs last year. We saw them in the state championship. But Briarwood just showing why they're one of the top 1A schools in the GIAA.
And I do want to mention, big shout out to Brett Taylor from GIAA.TV. I wanted to make sure that his Westfield school, that they're actually on a bye. I was actually trying to look for their score. I also don't have a score update for Stratford Academy as they are taking on a GHSA school. So we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, this is a very interesting one. Rock Springs Christian Academy. They used to be in the gaps with Calvary Thrift. They are now in the GIAA. They ended up defeating Central of Talbotton, which is about 30 minutes away from where we live. So Rock Springs out of Milner, they end up getting a big win over a Central Talbotton team coming into this game 1-1.
Yeah, big-time win for Rock Springs. We've seen them in the gaps previously. Same with Central, but now they're both in the GIAA. Big win for them. And by the way, this is the first time me and you did not have to call a Friday night football game. We called last night's Central game, but we're excited to have the Scoreboard show. Also, we are presented by the Beck Center. Thank you to Roger Beck and the Beck Center of Academic and Athletic Success for their support of everything that we do. We're going to try to do this GIAA Scoreboard show plus the GHSA. We'll add that in later on, Richard. But just excellent coverage that we're going to be giving you throughout the season. Great job by Rock Springs, though.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to Holy Spirit Prep. Remember, this is where Anthony Edwards played basketball, but we're talking about football. They put up 60 on St. Mary's Academy. It was just an absolute drubbing of St. Mary's Academy. Holy Spirit Prep looking pretty good in football, Thrift.
Yeah, they are. St. Mary's, though, not a juggernaut when it comes to athletics, but they're a really good school and within the GIAA, and Holy Spirit just too much for them tonight as they win by 42.
All right. Before we get to the Columbus schools, we do have actually we'll start with the first school.
I'm going to say this. Let me say this, Richard. I was completely wrong. The only person that picked FPD was our guy Corey Black on the high school game day show we did today.
Right.
After seeing FPD, defending champions, lose to Pacelli last week 18-6, I didn't think First Presbyterian Day was very good. Obviously, I didn't know what I was talking about. And the whole Brookstone to only 3 points, that's got to be worrisome for Rance Gillespie and the Cougars, who were one of my favorites to win it all this year in the GIAA, beat First Presbyterian, lose to FPD. So guess what? They have the same record as Pacelli now. Pacelli started 0-2. Brookstone was 1-1. And everybody was talking about Brookstone's better than Pacelli. I don't think anybody knows anything when in regards to that. And a big-time win for First Presbyterian Day. Brookstone, heartbreaking loss, not to score a touchdown. That's got to be something Coach Gillespie's got to be like, all right, we got to get better than this.
And a big shout out to Scott Miller, the voice of the Columbus Cougars, and Beth Leatherwood for actually giving me the score update right around the same time. I was actually looking for this on ScoreStream, Max Preps. From what Scott Miller said, it was just a slugfest just because of the weather. I mean, it was muddy conditions. It just really wasn't ideal, to score any points in this game. I mean, both teams just trying to get out of here because of the weather conditions down in Macon.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And obviously you saw that tonight at Diamond Field, but tough loss for the Brookstone Cougars as now they go to 2 and actually they're 1-2 because their game last week got canceled. So they're 1-2 on the season right now. And to lose the First Presbyterian Day after, that was, I know heading in the offseason, beating them who they lost to in the state championship was probably one of the big things on their list, and to lose to them in a low-scoring affair in which, remember, Brookstone's offense has been pretty stout these last couple weeks, and obviously we know about the quarterback guru and Rance Gillespie. They didn't pan out that way against FPD as they lose 6-3.
Calvary Christian lost another game on the road, this time to Tatnall Square, a very talented Tatnall team that has beaten Pacelli, and they're one of the top teams in the GIAA. Calvary Christian, they're just going to continue to improve under second-year coach Emmanuel Brunson. I do like that their offense is a little bit more explosive now that TJ Benson is in the backfield. He's their leading rusher. I do like Nate Osborne as a quarterback, Luke Scoggins, a very good slot receiver. You also got Jackson has been doing a great, just coming in and stepping up as that second receiver behind Luke Scoggins. Calvary Christian will, like you mentioned, Thrift, be at home next week taking on Flint River Academy. The GIAA, we know that there are tough teams, and Tatnall Square is one of the best teams in the GIAA. I mean, how hard is it to make that move from the Gaps to the GIAA, where really the competition is just a little bit higher? It's a little bit higher tier than the Gaps.
Yeah, exactly right. But the fact that Calvary, I know 35 points is a lot, but then going on the road to a Tatnall Square team who, by the way, lost to Brookstone at the beginning of the season, beat Pacelli. Pacelli beats FPD. FPD then beats Brookstone. I mean, we got a bunch of – it's hard to make up what we think of 4A classification right now and who would be the favorites. If you look at the Maxwell rankings, a lot of those got turned upside down heading into today's matchup. But Tatnall Square did beat Calvary. Calvary is trying to get better each and every week. I think that win will come in the next few weeks. They got Flint River and Skipstone. The next two games are at home. But this was going to be a tough task. I didn't think they were going to beat Tatnall Square. And the fact that they didn't lose, 56-0 like they did against Stratford, I think they are still making strides and getting better under Coach Emmanuel Brunson.
And finally, the St. Anne Pacelli Vikings in front of their crowd at Diamond Field. The weather conditions were not ideal, but they just beat down Stone Mountain, a GHSA 3A school. 48-7. You know, Thrift, this game started off with a pick six, but Pacelli, as they got the lead, they were just more comfortable in that offense. A coach team by Dwight Jones is going to be a disciplined team, and they were able to capitalize on the mistakes of the Stone Mountain Pirates. I thought Thompson did a very good job as the quarterback. And Thrift, they got a new running back. Apparently, a Carver transfer coming in to the Pacelli Vikings. Nelson had a very good game. You know, he didn't start the first game of the season, but James Nelson had a big time run in this game, and Pacelli is now 2-2 on the season.
Yeah, so his name is Zion Mabry, who came from Carver, is now a Pacelli Viking, and he will be a huge part in why I think Pacelli is going to be a totally different team. They are going to be a team that is going to eventually, I think, make a deep run in the playoffs. I love what Coach Jones overcoming those two losses to start the season in Stratford and Tatnall Square, and then to win these last two, Stone Mountain and FPD, one of the biggest wins in program history. Great job by the Vikings tonight. Dominated Stone Mountain as they should have. Great call by Dave Platt and Mike Peacock on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. You can go back and rewatch that game. But talking with Coach Beck and Coach Jones and everyone on that staff, Chris Smith, they thought that they had what it takes. They're liking their progression of their offense. John Thompson's been phenomenal since taking over at quarterback last week, and a big-time win for the Pacelli Vikings. Now they get to 500. They got the next, it seems like, even with being on the road at Calvary, the next 6 weeks, all are in Columbus. I think you'll see Pacelli. They're going to have 8 wins by the end of this year, 7 or 8 wins. They're going to be top 4 or 5 in the GIAA and vying for a state championship.
And Thrift, as we approach 11 o'clock, most of these games, because they started at 7:30, are over, but they haven't been updated yet. And as we continue to do more of these shows, we'll build these relationships with these ADs so we can get some score updates. I mean,
yeah,
right now,
this is just the inaugural show, Richard.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we were just trying. The fact that you got as many scores up there as you did, great work by you. And as we continue this, we're going to have more and more scores within the GIAA, but specifically the 3 schools in our area, Calvary, Brookstone, and Pacelli. Pacelli won tonight, man. Brookstone losing on the road, Calvary losing on the road, and Pacelli beating Stone Mountain. It was a Viking lore here on this Friday night.
Absolutely. In the fourth quarter, Bullock Academy is leading Robert Toombs 35-7. We got Dominican Christian leading Skipstone Academy 32-12. Citizens Christian leads Stewart County 20-6. Terrell Academy leads Mount Sales Academy 18-0. And we've got Athens Christian leading Loganville Christian 20-13. And we also Strong Rock Christian in the fourth quarter. This might be a final. They defeated the Heritage Hawks up in Noonan, Georgia 48-0. And so as we continue doing these shows, we would love for you to get your scores in. Tiffaria Academy is leading Frederica Academy 22-9. Bethlehem Christian is leading Riverside Military 30-0. And by the way, Thrift, I do want to say something because Bethlehem Christian, that is a private school in Winder, Georgia. And I do want to say just my heart is just hurting for the community of Winder. What happened with Appalachia High School. I know the Bethlehem Christian is right there where Appalachia High School is.
Yeah, very sad situation. And we always send our condolences and our prayers to them. But
absolutely.
If you look at the 4A classification, Max Preps rankings that they use to rank their teams, Bethlehem Christian is the number 1 ranked team in the GIAA 4A classification. The number 2 team was Brookstone. 3 was Bullock, 4 Stratford, 5 Tatnall, 6 First Presbyterian Day, 7 Pacelli. Calvary's all the way at 12 of a local team. There's 15 schools in the 4A classification. So number 2 Brookstone loses to number 6 First Presbyterian Day. Pacelli also beat First Presbyterian Day. They lost to number 4 and number 5 Stratford and Tatnall. So these rankings are going to fluctuate for sure next week. But number 2 goes down and number 6 wins. So First Presbyterian Day will go up. They go to 3-1 on the season, but Pacelli giving them their first loss last week, beating Stone Mountain. I know a lot of people wrote them off after they got shut out by Tatnall Square a few weeks ago. And after they lost to Stratford Academy, people were like, Pacelli, this is not going to be their year. That year of dominance over the last 3 years, making it to the state championship and winning it 2 years ago. And then this past year, Richard, being the number 2 or 3 seed and losing in the playoffs. They are a team that's going to be contending. As long as Dwight Jones is the coach, they're going to be contending. Big-time win over Stone Mountain. Last week was probably the even bigger win against a First Presbyterian Day that came in as undefeated, ranked in the top 3, and was the defending state champions. To beat them, then beat Stone Mountain. Next week, you play Whitefield. Then you have Strong Rock, Calvary Christian, Brookstone, and Westville to wrap it up. Richard, I would willing to bet Pacelli's going to be the favorite in every one of those games because Brookstone's at home. I like this Pacelli team more and more each and every week. We start to see them, and they look great tonight.
Yeah, we saw that last year where Pacelli just continued getting better after their loss to Glenwood. One more game that I do want to talk about, Thrift. George Walton Academy is leading the Kings Academy 28-6 in the third quarter. I mean, of course, this is probably going to be a final. The Kings Academy, one of those gap schools like Rock Springs, like Calvary Christian, that has been welcomed into the GIAA this year.
Exactly right, man. And there's 52 GIAA schools, and within 4 classifications, 15 of them are in the 4A. Now, obviously, because of the 3 schools that we cover in Georgia Alabama Sports Live, Pacelli, Calvary, and Brookstone all playing the 4A, we're very familiar with them. And then me being the play-by-play announcer for GIAA state championships last year, I understand 3A, obviously Flint River and 1A. 2A, still learning a little bit and understanding as we continue our partnership with the GIAA, and we look forward to next week having more scores updated. We started our show a little bit earlier tonight than probably what will happen normally as we continue this throughout the season. We're probably going to start at around 11:15 to allow the games to end and then get all the score updates that we can have to be able to do this show. But just with the inaugural show, man, I just thought it was obviously a great night for the Pacelli Vikings. And again, thank you to Roger Beck and the Beck Center of Academic and Athletic Success. Huge supporters of ours since the very beginning, going to be with us to the very end. And we appreciate his support. You're going to see that Beck Center logo and a lot of things that we do here on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And we look forward to being the premier coverage for all things GIAA. But a couple of schools, Flint River staying undefeated, top-ranked team in 1A. Shout out Joe Howard. Pacelli goes to 500. They'll move in the top 5 of 4A. Calvary and Brookstone both lose. And that FPD game, man, I can't believe that's how it played out. 6-3. If you were to ask me as a betting man, if I would have put money on it, would never have thought in a million years Brookstone only would have scored 3 points. Valwood, another team in the GIAA. I'm going to be honest, out of all the GIAA schools, Richard, I think Valwood is the best school in the GIAA, regardless of classification. I know in years past that it's been John Millage, but Valwood, I saw them last year in the state championship game. They beat Brookstone by 18. They're 3-0 on the season, and they're actually playing Pelham right now. They've already beat Frederico, Brookstone, and then the first game of the season, they beat Hamilton County. They won all those games by double digits. I think they're the best team in the entire GIAA. But luckily for all the teams in 4A, you don't have to play them in the state championship match.
Right. No, we've had just a great time here, Thrift. The GIAA High School Scoreboard Show presented by the Beck Center, and like you mentioned, we're gonna try to get this every Friday night after we get done calling high school football around 11 o'clock, 11:15. Yes.
Yeah, and I can add something too, Richard. Westfield, who had been the same region as Pacelli and was a 4A school, they're a 3A school this year. I don't know if you know that.
Interesting.
Yes. So they're actually Westfield School out of Perry, Georgia, who our guy Brett Taylor. I'm looking at and of course, if Max Brett's could be wrong and they could make me look an idiot, but the Max Brett's 3A state rankings, number 1 is Valwood, number 2, Tift Area Academy that you showed on the graphic. Number 3 is Deerfield Windsor. Number 4, John Millage. Number 5 is Westfield School.
How
so
about
Westfield, now a 3A school, but obviously Valwood, the prohibited favorite. Remember, they beat John Millage and broke that record that was the longest winning streak, not just in the state, but the entire country. And I think it was the longest record in Georgia football state history, regardless if it was GIAA or GHSA. So big-time wins for them, Richard.
Yes, and a big-time win for Pacelli tonight. I mean, this has been a great night of high school football in the GIAA. Looking forward to next week, Thrift. And this has been such an awesome show.
It has been an incredible show, Richard. And before we get out of here, I do want to throw up some of the local teams. We're not going to really go into too much detail. We don't really even have to throw up scores, Richard, because on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show, we'll talk about all these games and more on Sunday night when we do our, review or drop our ratings, and then we do our preview. But I know Spencer got a big-time win over Griffin. I know Northside won against Monroe. Harris County, one of the games on Georgia Alabama Sports Live, they dominated Daughtery, so that was a big win for them. Central won last night, and honestly, nobody was shocked about it, and honestly, it played out just the way we thought it would, Richard. So that was definitely what happened on Georgia Alabama Sports Live, those games that we were able to cover. But if you want to see our highlights, we're going to drop highlights from the Pacelli game that we did tonight. We're going to drop the Harris County highlights. All that will be on tomorrow. We'll have the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show, which we talk about all 60 teams that we cover in the Tri-City area. But like Richard said, every week we're going to have a GIAA scoreboard show dedicated solely to the GIAA. And then we'll have our show, the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show, that is dedicated to all the teams that we cover on our show on Saturday morning. And then be on the lookout. I'm not going to drop it yet, but coming up in the near future, you could see more things GIAA centric, because I feel like the GIAA doesn't get the coverage and the recognition they deserve, Richard, as one of the top programs and having elite programs throughout the state. People think that if they're not in the GHSA, they don't play elite level football. That's a mistake. Don't ever believe that. And we're looking forward to continue our partnership with all things GIAA on top of everything else that we do with Georgia Alabama Sports Live.
I love that you mentioned that, Thrift, because both you and I have called games for GIAA.TV. You've called for football, basketball. I've helped you out with basketball, and I have called for soccer. And we really appreciate everything that Brett Taylor has done for GIAA.TV and Tony. I mean, they've really just laid out the red carpet for us, Thrift, and we've been really happy just to have that partnership with GIAA.TV.
Yes, we are. So thank y'all so much. If you're watching now, you might as well subscribe on YouTube. You might as well like us on Facebook. Big time win for the Pacelli Vikings as they continue their 2-game winning streak and getting back on the right track. Brookstone loses. Richard, as you made mention, Calvary loses for teams in our area, and Flint River haven't lost a game since 2022. Big Rich, shout out Joe Howard. Go Wild! First down, Wildcats.
Wildcats.
Had a lot of fun, Richard.
All right, have a great rest of your night, everybody. We'll see you next time.